All right, thank you. So before I actually dive into what I'm going to talk about within Naval Air Systems Command, I'm going to give you an overview just in about 4 or 5 slides with about a 4-minute video, giving you some background to understand when I say complex systems, what am I talking about? And so much of the work we do in helping engineers improve um, their performance, the quality, um, reliability, and so forth. Often it's for business reasons, and that's important. But here, this is life and death kind of stuff, and I think it's really important to give you a feel for that. So let me first talk about the NAVAIR organization. So
Yeah.
going all the way up to the Navy, Secretary of the Navy. That breaks down into the military. At the top is the Chief Naval Operations. Under the CNO are the different parts, the technical and logistical support aspects of making the operational Navy happen. And that breaks into three major components. There's of course, the big Navy, as we refer to them, the NAVC part, ships and submarines, things that are out there. And, it's out on the ocean. That's why it's the Navy. But of course, there's two other really important aspects that have grown over the last century plus, starting with the Navy, or excuse me, with the air part of the Navy that I'm involved in. Putting airplanes on ships and taking the fight to the enemy. And of course, that started back in the earliest days of pre-World War II and going forward. In more recent times, the whole space and naval warfare theater with satellite systems and mass communications. That's become what's the space wars part of the Navy. But between these three, lots of technology, lots of hardware, software systems stuff. So taking NAVAIR down a level, we have two major fingers that NAVAIR breaks into. There's the aircraft division out on primarily the East Coast, centered at Patuxent River in southern Maryland. They have a campus up at Lakehurst in New Jersey, and they also have a small campus down in Florida at Orlando, which is the part of the training systems part of that piece of NAVAIR. On the West Coast is the weapons division. So this is the crown jewel of developing weapons systems that go in platforms. Like when we say a platform, we're talking about, in the case of the Air Navy, typically we're talking about an airplane that a weapon system is going to hang off of and make that a system of systems. And of course, many of our weapon systems actually hang off of U.S. Air Force platforms and other things. Probably a lot of people have heard about something called a Sidewinder missile that was developed and invented at China Lake campus, which is where I sit. So on this map, you can see that's on the West Coast. It's actually both China Lake and Point Mugu, the two campuses of the weapons division, are both within California. Normally, I'm up in the high desert at China Lake. Today, I happen to be down at the Point Mugu, which is right on the coast. And together, we do all the research and development, test and evaluation, and acquisition of those weapons systems that go on those platforms, that go out to our warfighters and help them defeat the enemy and come home safely. So with that, let me go forward and just give you a real brief. I'm not going to spend any time here, but this place started in the 1940s at China Lake, developing these systems during World War II, have gone forward, and over the last 80 plus years, we have developed all kinds of amazing things. And believe it or not, some common household things you would think of or you don't realize actually came from places in the military or NASA. So you've heard of Velcro, that came out of development for the space program. Well, you know those sticks that you break into two and something cracks inside and it glows? That was developed at China Lake um, for various warfighting reasons, but become a common household product today. So all kinds of stuff going on there, up to the modern day stuff with drones and amazing system of systems flying in the air doing their job. And that continues forward today. And the demand is getting only it's only increasing. The potential enemy is getting stronger, and we'll talk more about that. But here's what our weapons division part of NAVAIR, and believe me, what weapons division does, what they do at aircraft division are very, very interrelated. So really, this vision and mission applies. What I want to do here before we dive into the details of what I want to talk about, how we're going to do more with less, is I'll show you a quick video that gives you an idea behind what is it that makes this place tick and run. And it starts with a very, very important word. I'll just let it go at that. All right. So what you guys think of that? Pretty amazing stuff. And so when I say complex systems, I think a few pictures are worth more than 1,000 words. I think the idea of taking that word out of the dictionary and advancing it forward to all the firsts that have happened here. You notice it got faster and faster. Pretty soon you couldn't read them all because so much new stuff is happening all the time, and it's really all about that word innovation. Innovation is about not only developing something, but developing something and delivering it, and it works. And it has to work for the warfighter. So let's take that forward. And all this screen is just, this is the abstract that I put together for talking about what this brief would be. Engineering of complex systems at NAVAIR. Yes, we've been, in one of the slides I will talk about our diminishing workforce. It's nothing brand new. It's been happening for a couple of decades now. I'll show you some data that goes back 30 plus years to talk about that. But the point here is that we are in a time this year in a new administration, putting political views aside. This has made the situation in the real time right now even more severe, doing more with less. We have the same demands of the warfighter, which are always high, always increasing, dealing with threats. And right now, we have less people to do the same amount of work. So, that's doing more with less. I'm going to talk to each of these, about each of these points in terms of what we're doing here. And at the end, I'll sum this up with what I touched upon. So let's get started. First thing is we have an engineering and scientist development program. I'm going to overview that because that's something that really starts in at the earliest possible stage of engineering these systems. And this whole brief is about one important, but certainly not the only aspect of developing complex systems. And that's how do we take engineers and scientists fresh from universities or pretty fresh from other industries. But a lot of our folks come right out of the college university system. And how do we turn them into engineers that know the work that we do and how to apply those methodologies and learn those technologies and develop those amazing, fantastic systems. Something that we've defined for this early hire or early part of the workforce is a set of tiers in our engineering and science development program. It focuses in these 7 technical areas that everybody that starts to come and work at NOC-WD and the AD portion has a very similar approach, but this is the one I can talk about because this is where I live, is at the weapons division part. It's to teach people about these 5 fingers, these blue fingers, are really the major technical areas that we support in terms of electronic warfare systems and weapon systems, crown jewel of what we are and what we do, working in the modern battle space. To do all of that work, we have these amazing test ranges that you saw some pictures of that are on the land, that are out at sea. We can fire a Tomahawk cruise missile and test it coming out of a submarine in the ocean, fly it up to our land ranges in the desert, track it the whole time, collect data, see how it performs, for instance. It's amazing stuff. But what's the bedrock for those 5 major technical areas? It's every individual scientist and engineer needs to understand their role in planning a project. It can't be some person that throws a plan together, throws it over the wall of the team and says, here, go do this. So we teach some fundamental principles to those starting out folks, and we get them started. It's based upon exactly the knowledge that a lot of my peers here, like Julia and Alan and others, learned at the Software Engineering Institute from the capability maturity model, then developed into an actual method called team and personal process that we apply to engineering teams that are developing products. So that's something we do for them. And we put about 300 people a year through that as we hire. Of course, next year we have less people we're hiring, so we're going to turn down the numbers, but we still have to do that transition of understanding the planning isn't somebody else. It's you, the team, the individuals of the team that have to understand the work and make the estimates and do that work. And then what gets to really probably the what's the center of a lot of this whole presentation is the engineering of complex systems. Simply put, we've always referred to that as systems engineering. Systems engineering has gone very complex, such that, yes, we have people designated as systems engineers of teams and projects, but everybody is engaged in engineering the complex system. We have ways that we look at how involved you are in that and so forth, but it involves, in the case of project management and system engineering, 3 specific courses that we've developed that talk about how to get started in making that transition right away in your earliest days. I'm going to skip over these next 3 slides just by touching on them slowly, or actually the next 3 slides after this. But these courses are targeted at that, what I call an ESDP community. That's typically people in their first 4 to 5 years here, transitioning, becoming a junior engineer, transitioning to becoming a senior engineer or a journeyman, as you would typically refer to them in the broad workforce. What that leads to later is something I'll talk about called an exceptional engineering experience, and that's teamed together with how we do it at NOCWD, at NAVAIR, because we actually do that transition, or that project or that program is actually done across the entire NAVAIR system, both campuses, East Coast, West Coast. We'll talk more about that. But all of that then has to lead into a community of wisdom. People have to stay connected once they build those connections with the learning, the knowledge that they get initially, make those connections, and then stay involved, because the engineering of complex systems means nobody can know everything, and people have to know who to reach out to, who has expertise in areas that they are going to get and go solve for the next solution to the next challenge. So here's those 3 slides, and I'll quickly glaze over these. But first thing is, how do you engineer within a system? So this is a 1-day course that takes people through how do you understand this, and then a little bit of how you do it. The important thing about, and what I'll talk about here today, is not only do you put people in classroom environments and give them knowledge, but you give them hands-on interaction with each other, with people in the course that are experts at the location that you're at. So we have our engineers that are here at NOCWD, at China Lake, and at Point Mugu that assist the contractor that we bring in that teaches this course. And we team with the contractor, and we do this together, because that's a much more effective way of getting people involved earlier and leaving behind people they can reach out to and continue to consult with and get guidance from. That's the 100A course. The 100B course builds on that and talks about, now you're going to be in a real team. How do you thrive under pressure? How do you deliver according to the requirements that you have to meet, the commitments that you've made, and so forth? And again, this course goes through not only classroom learning in a day, but also working in teams, in small teams, and solving problems together and coming up with common solutions, bouncing ideas off of each other. And that's what we do in all of these courses. The third area, or the third course I'll talk about very briefly, it's addressing that other foundational part that supports all the technologies that we do here at NOCWD. And that has to do with, everybody has to learn as an individual, how are you part of the project planning and tracking mechanism that makes a project operate successfully and deliver quality products on cost and schedule. We actually teach that one in a day, but actually it's over 2 half calendar days, giving an opportunity to break it up, to do some class learning on the first half day, and the second day, a lot of hands-on operational workshops where people get to apply these methods and work together, and then how do they take back to their day job. So that's the latest piece that we've added to this, and I'll show you the larger view of that when we talk about this acceleration of scientists and engineers. This is what we started about 2018, and we called it the ACE initiative. ASE was originally accelerating systems engineering, but we realized it's not just the system engineers, it's all the scientists and engineers. So this is that overview. And it starts like this. Those same people that come in their first year or two, and they're our junior engineers, and they're learning, how to transition out of college and work in a real environment and learn about that real environment, which is, for us, it's what we do, developing weapon systems, testing them, and putting them on platforms, and building complex system of systems, and sending them out to the end user, the warfighter. It involves all of these aspects that we put together a few years ago. And along the left side, it's really these three bubbles of what do you do about the now, the hands-on, right now. What about the past? Because what we found, and I'll share this wisdom gap idea with you in a moment, but the idea is we are losing the capable, experienced engineers faster than we can replace them. We've got to do something about that. And then finally, how do we continue to take those extraordinary experiences and keep them going forward as a system engineer within NOC-WD, outside of NOC-WD, and now across the entire NAVAIR super system. And then finally, that led to communities of practice. And the communities of practice really nothing more than, I'll show you an example of this a little later, of just some different events we would call out on a typical year for the kinds of things people were engaged in. It's mostly in their day jobs, as we refer to it. In other words, you're assigned to a project to deliver a product that goes out to the fleet for them to use, and that's your day job. But in order to feed that day job and make it work, you've got to build connections, you've got to stay connected, you've got to learn new technologies, stay up with the current methodologies, collect data, understand how to use data, and on I could go. The right-hand side and around the center of piece of those new scientists and engineers are having a system, an organic system that we've had to learn to really switch our paradigm here at NOC-WD and at NAVAIR to, we've got to take some of our own time, meaning we, the more advanced or senior engineers, and invest just a small piece of that back into the new incoming workforce. And that involves working with an outside contractor. In this case, it's Exceptional Difference that I'll talk about, which happens to be people like Julia Mullaney and others. And we teamed with them, and we built things that they build the course material, they provide the training, we provide the real hands-on experiences and people that can talk to that. And together we build a very strong background for people getting the knowledge and then turning it into skills, abilities, and experiences, because those are the people that have the experiences. And on it goes from there. So I can go back. This was nothing new when we just started talking about, hey, what are we going to do about the fact that we're losing people faster than we can replace them? 6 years ago. Well, we've been around that circle many times, going back to the 1960s and 70s. Here at NOC-WD, for instance, we wrote a set of books, and this is one of its main points. The weapons of our fleet can't not lag behind world technology, because if we're not good enough to fend off the bad guys, then it's going to invite them to challenge us more. And we're certainly in that position today as much, if not more than ever. Like I said, this is 60, 70 years ago, we're still thinking that idea. So it's nothing new. It's just we have to continue to innovate the way we approach how we build that complex workforce to build those complex systems. The ACE program, as I mentioned, that we started a half dozen years ago or so, this was the situation. It was really a wisdom gap. We thought it was just systems engineering. It's really in how we engineer everything. And so it's with our whole science and engineering community. Our pledge was this: we would take people through this program as we do still today, and we would say essentially, this is the pledge you're going to take. You're going to dedicate yourself to learning this stuff and applying it and staying connected and all the rest. So that was the background for the foundational. What are we dealing with this situation? What is it that we're asking everybody to dedicate to? And there's the mission statement of what it is we're making happen. It's all about that innovation, that stuff we started out seeing, what NOC-WD has done for so long and continues to do going forward. Sorry, let me just turn off my email so it'll stop bugging me like that. All right, so I mentioned earlier there's this wisdom gap that we had this sense of, and we weren't sure. So we did some research. We pulled some of our own basic measurements from our HR department when we started this program a half dozen years ago, and we went back, back to the 1990 timeframe. So we look back over about 30 plus years, or 30 or so years, and we started to see when we looked at, people that had been here more than 15 years versus people that had been here less than 5 years. So the new kids on the block versus the people have been long enough around that they've done things, they've done them a few times, they're becoming our experts, not just our journeymen, but people that have done it a few times and maybe on different programs or on the same program. And we started to see a difference in the height of those counts, just those simple head counts of the people in those kinds of jobs. And where we really started to see it change was in the early 2000s. Now, some of you are much younger than I am. I remember the 1990s. That was the days of the Clinton administration. We cut way back on military spending. We stopped hiring altogether for actually quite a long time. And I think that's what sparked it and started it. And I think we've been trying to catch up ever since. And this data I have only takes us through 2024, but we see is from when we started collecting this data and looking at it, 2018, we'd look at it every couple of years. We still, as much as we're trying to turn things around, it's not happening real fast. It's like turning around an aircraft carrier at ocean. It doesn't turn around quickly. It goes a ways. And I think we are in that situation. And of course, with the new political administration, we know that things are probably, when I look at 2025 data, I suspect I'm going to see that we've lost even more of our experienced people, except this time it's not at some normal pace. There were a couple of real jars to our workforce already this year, a couple of times where a lot of expert people left suddenly. So it's all the more reason that we're looking at things real hard, like how are we going to take these complex systems we have to develop, and what are we going to do about how we're approaching it? And as I said, I'll repeat myself, an important part of that, it's only one part of it, but very vital, is how do we take our workforce and transition it much more quickly to deal with that. So interesting data to look at. Now, this concept slide is something we put together initially when we came up with the idea of this program, and I think it really captures at the core the principles of what it is we are trying to accomplish. It's kind of our mission statement for what ACE has become for us, with E3 being the first major part of it. I'll talk about what E3 is more in a moment. What we're doing now with our initial starting workforce with the Engineering Science Development Program, and how we're taking that forward into our community. But we go around the circle here, and when we want to take our youngest engineers, our youngest scientists and engineers, and give them more responsibility on the job as early as possible in their career. And the way that you do that is you make them aware much more early and effectively what the workforce environment is that we're in, all those innovations that we have to continue to maintain and keep doing. And those are changing requirements and moving targets. And then we have to get not only knowledge in front of them, but very quickly we have to give them skills, abilities, and the ultimate of all of that is experiences. So extraordinary experiences, meaning not only experience from the day job that you're in on the particular program you're working on, but also staying in touch with people on other stuff. You're working on a weapon system, somebody else here is working on a platform system. Those two things come together. People have to know about each other. Both of those individuals have to know people in the ranges where we're going to go test those systems and check out that they actually perform as planned, et cetera, et cetera. So you create, a community that does that. That takes our organic senior workforce we talked about earlier, and they become our capable mentors we talk about here. What we've now called those people, or refer to them as our technical champions that we're building. And they're actually taking part in not only mentoring in the jobs that they're in, their day jobs of supporting specific programs of weapons and platforms, but also mentoring the engineering workforce in how to deal with challenges in the technology side of things. Not just how's your career going and what are you going to do and where are you going to go with it, but how do you solve problems that seem difficult and you don't know a way out. They can help with that, and they do. We've seen that over and over now. So it's a community of mastery that it eventually comes down to, and I'll show you a picture of how that, or actually I did on the previous slides when we we're talking about the early development program. All of those go through from the ESDP years into a community of mastery where we're actually sharing stories about how we've dealt with things, how we've solved problems, and giving people points of contact for helping solve complex system questions. Oh, I skipped that, sorry. So what that leads to is training that ignites learning. That's the core nature of the way we're doing this training now is different. It's not 40 hours in a classroom or a couple of days in a classroom and 1,000 slides. And believe me, I've been through those experiences. They don't stick very well. When you get hands-on, when you get to break into groups, talk about how would you solve it and how would I solve it, and then sharing our ideas, we make better solutions and we come up with better approaches, especially if somebody's sitting on your sub-team solving something is somebody with experience and they've seen not that exact same thing, but they've seen similar things. So they have ideas of how do you think outside the boxes that you're in. And all of that amplifies to making the connections across the entire Naval Air Warfare Center, command structure with the aircraft and the weapons sides of it, up to the entire engineering workforce supporting the warfighter workforce that we're all providing for. So really, this is really the core principle of probably all of this, but it's kind of boring because it's a few words with some circles, but it's vital. It's important. It overlaps, and it's what all of this is based upon. Really, what it boils down to is this three-pronged approach that we've built. Continuously improve what we're doing right now. That's with what I'll show you in a moment, an exceptional engineering experience as early young journeymen that have just come out of their startup years in a development program that we have that I've already talked about. How do we continue to keep preparing for the future? And that's by people have learned how to plan, how to engineer complex systems, and therefore they work together and we help them in launches of not only the projects they're working on, but the learning that they're doing. And then the third part of it are these things called field guide development. These are actually documents we've put together, capturing the stories. This is the one that addresses that third aspect. We're losing people faster than we can replace them. We're capturing their stories, how have they solved problems in the past, and then we've put those into these documents that we share. Actually, we publish them as they look like a book. You can stick them in your back pocket. You can read through them. They're easy reads, but they give you real touch to real problems that we've solved here within in NAVAIR, in NOC-WD, in programs just like yours on a weapon or a platform or a range system, etc. So there's a detailed view of it. I'm not going to get into the details, but basically it's building these kinds of field guides. Two of them actually exist today, and we have deployed them. We've used them. We've shared them. We use them in the training courses. We give out copies. We made them publicly available in a soft format so that everybody can reach them. but we actually give them touchable, feelable things that, like I said, people sometimes it's important to be able to touch something, feel something, look at it, read through it, mark it up, etc. Also, because of the people that are involved in capturing these real stories from, they're around, they can be reached out to, and we can communicate with them. Next field guide that we're developing now, we're getting started to do, is one that's on innovation. Isn't that amazing? That's exactly what drives us. We figured that's really, once we got the basics in place of the essence of system engineering, how to deal with failures, how you make innovation happen. So that's where we're going next. So I've referred several times to this thing called an exceptional engineering experience. That was dealing with the now. That's how do we take the current journeyman workforce and accelerate them in the path from being, I have a lot of knowledge, to how do I turn that into a lot of capability, a lot of experiences that we take this knowledge and then we turn it around and we apply it to the day jobs that we're in. We do it in a slow, fast kind of way, which means it's not a 40-hour classroom. It happens over about 7 or 8 months. People go through some various sessions. I won't get into the details here today, but they learn in these 4 areas of culture, commitment, and quality and value, these 12 major broad areas of what does that mean and how do you do it? How do you deal with planning as an individual and as a member of a team? How do you check the quality of the products that are being built? Not only the technical actual product, but what about those methods and the processes and the tools that we're using to develop those? How do you look at how that product performs for the end user, for the warfighter? And then finally, what about the culture? What do you do about getting others involved? One of the less important lessons they talk about there is how one person on a team can actually affect the entire rest of the team. So investing in small bits and pieces, because we can't take the entire multi-thousand community of engineers and put them all through this at once, but we do it by individuals that affect teams, teams that affect programs, and programs that affect major system of systems. The part that NAVAIR injects into that with this thing that we bring in from exceptional difference are these the accelerated scientists and engineering factors. We give them a kickoff, which starts with some planning experiences. Then we give them commitment and quality and value experiences. And what do I mean by experiences? That's the real live engineer that's been at NOC WD or at NOC AD for a few cycles of projects. They've been around for maybe 15, 20, 30 years, and they have stories, and they come in and they tell one of those stories and give the people in the course over a long period of time opportunities to say, how would you have solved that problem? And when they come up with ideas, then they get to come back and say, now here's how it actually went in my case, but you guys have some neat ideas, and I'm here to reach out to you when you need me. So it's really been a very, very valued, effective way of over a few months building up very quickly knowledge, skills, abilities, and experiences in our workforce as early as possible in their maturing years. If you put that on a 1-year map, if you kind of look up on it, well, obviously the big focus is on the bottom. People are working on projects that they're assigned to develop a weapon system, to work on a platform system that's integrating that weapon system into that platform. So I'm working on F-18 or F-35, and I have to take a weapon system and put it onto that airplane so that it can use it effectively and get the pilot home safely. That's where everybody's going to spend most of their time. But by poking in these things throughout a typical year of extraordinary experiences outside the day job, outside the project that you're actually working on, and connecting with others, with maybe doing special events once or twice a year, with every month what we started to do in NOC WD, just like what we do with these tech talks for the C, for the Software Excellence Alliance, is have our own sharing sessions where our own local stories are told. And so all of that is what leads to that overarching view I showed you earlier of what the accelerated program looks like. This is what it looks like on a map, on paper, if you will, in terms of how often things happen. Most of your time still on your day job, but a little bit of time pays back in high dividends for getting you connected and hearing new ways to look at things. Innovation, that's what makes innovation happen. So what does that leave you with? People go through these learning and KSAE, knowledge, skills, abilities, experience, growth opportunities, and they're on the job, and now they need to continue to repeat that. That's our ACE community. And so what is this community? Well, people go through these experiences in the E3 program, for instance. They're going to learn what it is they think they want to do. They'll put that together and they'll make a plan going forward. And then as they carry out their plan in their careers, they will update that. The system engineering field guides, our plan is to continue to build those in different areas, but also to take the same field guides and update them from time to time, because things about failure will change. Things about innovation may change. We have ideas from other groups like how we do testing. They'd like a field guide that captures some of their stories, and how do we take that forward and learn from it and share those adventures, etc. The acceleration of these scientists and engineers on their job, outside their job, all of those are just ways of enhancing the environment you're in and what you're learning from what you're doing, lessons learned, but also what other people lessons learned, so we can make a complex system of how we can take advantage of everybody's experiences. All of that leads to things that we do with helping projects plan their work, carry out and track their work, and more. So just lots of things that can turn into for us, and that we've been starting to take advantage of these last few years. We built an architecture to go along with it. We're still developing this, but we've actually started to carry out some of this. For instance, we bring out some focused learning sessions that deal with how to deal with failure, and some of our programs have sent numbers of people through that, and then they team together and they're dealing with solving quality issues, not just delivering a product, but a product that works and works well. So this is all still things that are, it's not just we write it down on a piece of paper, but we're continuously looking at this, we're doing it, we're learning from it and improving it. So we're going to wrap this all up. We're just about out of time for me, and give you an opportunity to ask some questions. This is really the major highlights of what I was talking about from the abstract, taking it forward. A dwindling engineering workforce, it means demands for supporting our workforce for our warfighters. It's not just increasing because things are always changing with our adversaries, but the fact that we have less people to do it definitely makes it feels like there's more to do and there's less of us to do it. So we've got to come up with effective ways of dealing with that. And it's through this layered scientist and engineering community approach of starting with the earliest new hires in our science and engineering, giving them skills, or starting with knowledge, I should say, giving them knowledge of all the technical areas we work in, but giving them a foundational understanding of engineering of complex systems, planning those projects, and the fact that everybody is a key part of that. An engineering approach that includes everybody being trained not only in the traditional areas of knowledge and skills and abilities, but adding this instruction approach that we've come up with, where we're taking experiences and giving them experiential growth by hearing from other people's experiences right here in the same place, but from previous cycles, and being able to learn from that as well. And then finally, with more work to do and less people to do it, we need to team with outside help to help us develop these learning experiences, and then team with them and inject our people so that they can come into a classroom environment, provide their experiences, provide their wisdom, and then be able to walk away from that. And we're teamed with a contractor like Exceptional Difference to help keep that going, so that we have a good blend of contractor and government people working together to make this happen going forward.